Gospel of Matthew. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the one who has been born, King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him." When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. "In Bethlehem in Judea," they replied, "for this is what the prophet has written. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means the least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me, so that I too may go and worship him." After they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen when it rose went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. They opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And, having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. And now we're going to sing hymn number 79, "Go Tell It on the Mountain."
Go
Create Safe Spaces by Natasha Sistrunk Robinson from 2017. The toxic environment of name-calling, shouting, and ignoring the other has now become the norm, and that toxicity has infiltrated the church. At a time when it could be healing to draw near to others as we draw near to Christ, we are actually pulling away and retreating to the places where we feel most comfortable, or worse, to the lonely place of isolation, because we simply don't want to deal with others. Into this reality, God invites us to speak truth and love, to love well. Neither of these invitations are easy. In fact, I have learned in my personal life and in leading and mentoring others that it requires the discipline of practice to speak and love well. We most certainly will get it wrong sometimes, and we may even feel like we're failing outright. But the only true failure is to quit and not to keep trying. We must learn to persevere in this faith journey. Communal spaces within the church and among the body of believers in Christ should always be safe for those who are suffering. When it is not, it is because leaders have not created a safe environment for people to be fully present and welcome. It is because we, not the other, are in error. The good news is that each of us can learn to create safe spaces, and indeed this is an act of discipleship. Offering ourselves to others as people of character who are gracious, loving, honest, and trustworthy people is the way that we embody Christ. Let's take a moment to center down.
When I was going to college many years ago, I had a wonderful social work teacher. And the name of the class was Changing from Within. And he had us read this play, Henrik Ibsen's An Enemy of the People, because he was trying to show us what happens when you try to make change from within. It can be very difficult. In The Enemy of the People, how many of you have seen that? Oh, Ibsen was such a earth rocker. In the Victorian age, he wrote about things that no one wanted to talk about or say. And one of the things that he talked about was the fact that we are not as in community for one another. And that when somebody calls us on something, we'd much rather shoot the messenger than change our ways. And that's what happened in The Enemy of the People. The doctor, Dr. Stockman's brother, was the mayor. And so Dr. Stockman, everybody in town's getting sick, very sick. And so he goes and tests things, and it's the end of the 1870s. It was published in 1882. So the only thing they could do is like test the waters for the bacteria. They tested, it turned out the baths were contaminated. But they were also the chief revenue for the town. So when he first told people why their family and friends were sick, they thought he was great. When they found out how much it was going to cost, they thought he wasn't great. And his brother made up this story about how he was trying to get more inheritance than him from the man that had raised them. And it just goes through the whole thing of showing how the people in the news reacted, and how the people who were neighbors reacted, and how his family reacted. But his children saw him as being a hero because he cared about what he did, and he cared about what he said. And he went about it in a way that you would think, well, that's the right way to go about it. You go take the test, and then you just announce it to the people about what happened. Because, you know, human beings are logical, right? Shooting the messenger is like, it's so old. 440 BC is the first record that we have of someone saying something along that line. Nobody delights in the bearer of bad news. And in some places, in China and some of the other dynasties, the bearer of bad news knew that they were going to be killed after they gave the bad news. And we think, oh, that's barbaric. But it really isn't. It's actually very human. Harvard did this study not that long ago about why shooting the messenger is such a psychological upheaval for people. Why people would rather believe that a virus doesn't exist than accept that their family members might die. And they came to the conclusion that it's just how we're wired. And I know that sounds like, oh well, but we have to look at how we're wired and then use our souls and our hearts and our minds to override it when it's selfish and when it's only serving to keep us in a pattern that is not healthy or life-giving. They did 11 different experiments to come up with this, and all 11 experiments showed that significantly the person that bore the bad news was disliked the most. Of course, they did it with having a nurse come in and have to tell somebody that they had cancer, and then had them describe that nurse. And they described her in pretty horrific terms. And the nurse would go and tell others that their test came back clear. And they just thought this person was just beautiful and sweet and nice. And it happened over and over. They did several others. One experiment involved an opportunity to win an additional $2 by having a research assistant picking a number from the hat. So you didn't pick the number, your research assistant picked it. The assistant's colleagues was tasked with delivering this outcome of the pick. And while they had nothing to do about who did the picking, so the professor had somebody else pick, that person gave it to somebody else, and then that person went and told what it was. The people who were the messengers of the bad news, that people didn't win this $2, they were rated as less than innocent, less likable. And the ones who won, the effect seemed to extend specifically to those who were delivering the message of good news. So it isn't just that we shoot the messenger. It's that we praise those that tell us things that we want to hear. And that's okay until it sets up a situation where people will lie to us to tell us what we want to hear, rather than us having to make changes. And if you look at what happened with the Magi who came, they were in that situation. They didn't know it till they got there. But when they showed up in the palace and they said to Herod, "We've come to see the King of the Jews," Herod had rebuilt a temple. He had married a Hasmonean woman to be seen as Jewish. He had done all this studying. He had tried to convert the language from Greek back to their language. He tried all this stuff, and he killed anybody that said that he was a king of the Jews. And we're told this, he died in 3 BC, he was pretty sick before then. So we're told this for a reason. We're told this because it's always hard to tell the good news. We like to sing, "Go tell it on the mountain." But sometimes what we're saying is, but you gotta give this stuff up if what you want is peace. You gotta treat people this way if what you want is a good society. The research suggests that shooting the messenger has a real basis in the way people act in everyday situations. It stems from a number of sources, including desire to make sense of negative or unexpected situations. Human beings have egos, and when we get it wrong, our brain takes over to try to tell us why that happened, because it can't be that we really got it wrong. While the researchers concentrated on the likability of a messenger, they add that participants could be making other negative judgments as well. For example, one of the studies found that people also judge bringers of bad news as less competent. Who brings us bad news? Do thousands of people showing up at the border because it is too hot to grow their crops anymore because we won't give up our gasoline? Is that not telling us bad news? Just build a wall and maybe we don't have to even look at that, and we never have to change anything. We can go on and on with different things and just say, okay, well, as long as you don't wear a mask, there is no virus, so therefore your children are free and they're not going to get sick. And that sounds really weird, but that is how human beings think. And Jesus knew that. He said that a prophet's never loved in the place that they come from. You have to say hard things. You have to speak truth to power. But to say, well, those people are just lying or they're stupid is not the way to go. We are told very specifically in Matthew 5, do not call your brother stupid. The word that's in there is raka. Do not call them stupid. Try to understand where they're coming from. If it's just anything, any bizarre idea that they have, try to listen to the paradigm that they work with instead of trying to push how you think on them. Because a lot of times people are just going to go with where it's the most comfortable to go. They're going to stick their heads in the sand and say nothing's going on. It's human nature, but Christianity is about making us better humans. Supernatural, over what's natural. If we look at John 8, we hear people say, the truth will set you free. And then we hear Gloria Steinem had a saying about it, that the truth will set you free, but it'll really make you angry. And that's the cleaned up version of it. And we see that Garfield said it as well. The truth will set you free, but first it will make you miserable. And if we know that what we're doing is bringing truth, then that's one of the reasons we have a church. while we have a membership here. Because people need to be supported when they're making changes. It's not just to keep Quakerism going. It's to help people be more secure and loved, because leading a good spiritual life is sometimes opposite than what our brain is telling us that we need to do. Jesus was saying, you know, I've been taught by the Father sent me. And they said to him, but we're the offspring of Abraham. So this is the way we think. We think about ourselves as these Israelites, and you need to quit talking to us about what we need to change, because the fact that we're just offshoots of Abraham, that's good enough for us. And he said, no, it's not. If you think that's what's going to help you, that's not going to happen. It takes the truth to set you free. The wise men did the right thing at first. They were supposed to go to the king and talk to the king about where this new king was. And they did that, and then it said he got very disturbed. And from the way he had treated his family members when he got disturbed, I can imagine they saw a very angry Herod and thought, oh my goodness. And so he says to them, how about you go and you find this baby and you worship that child, and you tell me, because I want to go worship that child too. There is going to be no day that Herod was going to go from his palatial extravagance to a little town of Bethlehem. He just was not going to do it. He did build the aqueducts to Bethlehem. The irony to it is that at some point in time they got polluted. So it really brings us back around to the fact that adulterated things are things that are contaminated. And truth is what isn't contaminated. And we put contamination, sprinkle it like salt and pepper, all over our realities so that our egos can take it. But with Christ and with faith, all things are able to be accepted. All things are possible. And a lot of times people leave it right there. But if you really want the truth to set you free, it says, all things are possible to those who do good and are called according to his service. When you listen to the Holy Spirit, then that will make it possible. It's not about telling the Holy Spirit what the Holy Spirit should do for us. It's the other way around. When we stop living for ourselves and we start living for God, for love, then that is how the transitions start to happen. So once they came and they did everything that they were supposed to do, and they realized that that wasn't going to work, it was sort of like Matthew has people making these decisions. He has Joseph making the decision to divorce Mary and put her away quietly. And then he has a dream, an epiphany, and says, okay, well, the angel talked to me in a dream. And then with the Magi, the angel talked to him in a dream too, or them in a dream, and told them not to go back. What is a dream? What is it that we dream? Is it a lot of our constructs? What we're afraid of? What we want to take in, so trying to make some sort of sense of life? I mean, can dreams not get really weird sometimes? Mine have different levels, and I'm seriously talking levels. Like, You climb up and down things. And that's just the way my brain tries to make sense of things. And look how messed up that is. You wouldn't want to live in all of your dreams, would you? So after Jesus was born, they come in, they tell them, the Magi come in, they follow this star. They come in, and when they speak truth to power, that we're here to see the King of the Jews, it's a baby, not you. It's a baby that was just born. He gets disturbed. But they start seeing something. He calls them in secretly after everybody else has gotten all upset. He's gotten all of Jerusalem upset about it. And then instead of doing it publicly, he did it sneakily. He lost their trust. And because he lost their trust, that is when things started to change. They knew they had to go back a different route. And we know that we have to accept the fact that bringing the good news, bringing truth, saying yes, it is hard sometimes not to just fall prey to temptation. It's tough sometimes not to just take the easy way, or sometimes it's not even about taking the most simple way, it's about taking the one that's going to make us feel the best or be the most comfortable. But if we want to talk with other people, we've got to start changing ourselves first. We can't, well, everybody's a hypocrite. We're all trying to live into what we believe. And we fall short. But we can't just use that as a persona or a facade and say, I am like this. You can say, I'm living into that. I haven't gotten there yet. I remember when Sarah was at the house and we had a group of people over and we're handing out things for Love Thy Enemies, no exceptions. Little things to put on the cars or little cards to take home. And it was from FCNL, so our legislative body. And several of the people said, I can live into this, but I'm not there yet. But if we're going to ask somebody else to make a change, we've got to do it too. We can't make it all about them. And we're asked to be as shrewd as snakes, but as innocent as doves. Be truthful, be honest. That does not mean be naive. Because people are going to believe lies. These are just a few out of like a day in the news. That we can reach herd immunity with a virus that can easily evolve. Not gonna happen. It will evolve around whatever immunity we've got. But people don't want to hear that. They're scared. They're frightened. They're frightened that if they don't put themselves on the line, their friends aren't going to think they're strong. They're not going to think they're with them. They're not going to have a sense of community. They're not going to get the support that they need from the other men in that group or their wives from one another. Some of the people that I know in Richmond who are in some of these horrific groups are at heart trying to be good people. They've been misled. We had a happy hour heretics, and one of the missionaries from Friends United meeting came, and she talked about how hard it was for her to deal with people who believed the flat earth theory. It's the first time I had heard that. I thought that was like a long gone thing. You know, I didn't think anybody would ever think the boats that come back after we don't see them anymore actually fell off the edge. I thought that no one could think like that. But when our egos are in a situation where we're frightened or uncomfortable, sometimes we will believe and follow anything. When life starts going very fast and there are laws that are changing that you don't feel comfortable with, it can make you push back. A lot of the people were making decisions around whether or not to be supportive, open and affirming in their denomination. And I know that this meeting was open and affirming way before any denominations started talking about it. But at the same time, I've also seen seminaries that say, I'm really afraid that if we put this out there, that your congregation has to be open and affirming, that we're going to lose those people because they can't hear us after that. There's a saying among organizers, 1 step ahead makes you a leader, 2 steps makes you the enemy. It's hard to know how to help people grow into where they need to be without demanding that they be all the way over here right now. There's this woman that wrote this, how to be a success at everything and why people believe false information and how to combat it, according to the experts. It's a really short title, so I'm not going to read what she has written here because it's a lot like the title. But her name's Stephanie Bosa, and she said, my best friend from high school believes that President Biden is dead and the guy in the White House is a doppelganger. And we hear these things, and we think, who in the world would believe that? People who are frightened believe that. People who have been told that how they live and who they are is over. That's not going to be passed on to your children. That morals are decaying. They're told that structures and institutions aren't going to make it anymore, and they can look at the number of closed churches, and that seems like it's right to them. It is frightening. She read out of Howie Jacobson's study that he did, and the name of this one is Peter Bregman. You can change other people. The 4 steps to help your colleagues and employees, even families, up their game. You can have conversations with people and ask them questions. Telling them facts is rarely going to change their minds. Ask questions. We have something called the Listening Project. I'm not really sure what we've done with it, but we used to go into areas where there was a lot of division like this, and the Quakers went from door to door asking queries for the people to start thinking about it. You cannot change a paradigm without asking the questions. They are just going to push back if you just hand them a flyer with 12 facts that says in any kind of way that they're stupid at the end. I'm guilty of that. People start rattling stuff to me that I don't believe, and I rattle the stuff back to them. They're like, oh, well, this Bible verse means that. And I'll be like, oh, no, it doesn't. You know, and then we start into an argument. Is that person going to change? No. I should ask questions. How did you come to that conclusion? What's going on with you? I had a situation happen when we were going through the split with our Indiana yearly meeting. And a person who was actually doing a lot of the organizing against those of us that wanted to be led by our meetings and by the Spirit within our meetings for what was right for our meetings. But what he was afraid of was that all the meetings would become open and affirming, and he would feel uncomfortable being there. And so I got to sit next to Steve Angel, who is a really great Quaker. And he started asking questions. How did you come to that conclusion? Can you tell me more about that? The man's wife was sitting next to him. Within an hour of this conversation, this man is crying. He's talking about what had happened to him traumatic as a child. His wife said he had never admitted that to anybody, and now he's going to get help. Steve helped to make it better by asking questions rather than just going, you are just stupid to believe like that. We have to be messengers of hope. It doesn't matter what people are saying to you. There's still that of God in them. And your job isn't just to turn them away and say, oh, well, my goodness, I'm just not going to deal with you. I think the reason that Jesus told the disciples to brush their feet is that they were still very immature. And arguing with somebody doesn't make a lot of sense. Said as somebody who argues. I will definitely argue my point down to the floor. But that's about covering my ego. That's not really going to help change anybody's mind. We can only do that by providing safe spaces around us so that people know we're safe to deal with. So that they feel your love, so that they feel that of God in you. And then we can become messengers. We can become like the Magi. We can go seek the light.